Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel where we talk all things photography, and today is another episode of Touchy Feely, so let's get into it. So welcome to episode 2 of Touchy Feely. It's the show where I retouch something and talk about my feelings. So here's a recent shoot with Hayley. We shot this at Boat, which is a yoga slash cafe slash co-working space here in East London. It's not too far from me. I've shot there a few times now. We shot there all of last week with their instructors, and when Hayley got in touch about putting something together for her website and social and her personal training business, I thought Boat would be the perfect place. As you can see by the raw here, Boat is quite dark. They do have those bulbs in the background. You can see the window in the background there offering a little bit of daylight, but by the time you get to the back of the room, it's really dark. So I tend to shoot in these situations and try and expose for the light parts. So for the window here, it's a lot easier in post to save shadows than it is to save highlights. So if you're a little under, you can brighten up those shadows and still save your image and still get a really nice color to your images. So if I go and pop the adjustments back on there, we can see we've got a lovely bright image of Hayley. Hayley is a professional dancer by trade, I guess. She's been dancing all her life and she is now adapting her dance skills to the personal training world. We've got a nice bit of movement there. As you can see, I shot at ISO 1600, 250th of a second at 1.6. I was on the Canon 50mm 1.2. A lot of the time when I'm shooting athletes or dancers or anyone who's used to moving, I get them moving first. And I always say, you do your thing, you move around, and I'll just jump in and shoot bits, and then if we catch some nice frames, we'll try and recreate that and work into that and develop that a little bit further. It helps them stay comfortable, and it also gives me an idea of what their authentic movement is anyway, because as with Hayley, I wasn't sure, you know, I'm no expert in dancing, so here we are. I'm going to export this now and bring it into Photoshop. Okay, here we are in Photoshop. First thing I normally do in Photoshop is I do a Command J just to duplicate the original layer, just so we've got a fail-safe and you're not altering your only copy of that layer. I'm just going to use the patch tool and get rid of anything that might be a little distracting. Even just little things like curtain here, like little weird folds and stuff. Using the patch tool is not always ideal, especially if your images are going to be blown up quite big, but when it's just for web and social, you're usually all right. And one technique that is surprisingly good is if you press M and use the marquee tool, you can just drag over something, Command T, and hold the shift button and drag something down. I just didn't like the gap. Okay, and deselect. And you would never know if we switch that off and on. I just wanted it to seem a bit more, I don't know, closed off. A lot of the time with my Photoshop stuff or my editing stuff, I'm just like super picky. Stuff that people probably would never notice, but for me, I like to get rid of it. So I try not to do too much skin retouching, but armpits are always a nightmare. Obviously, I know that people don't have like super smooth armpits, but any like little bits of stubble or redness that, you know, when people are looking their best, might not like to see. One thing that you might find when you're stretching the dynamic range of a picture, that especially with skin, is that redness tends to show up a lot easier. Any blemishes in the skin really become a lot more obvious when you're boosting those shadows. I try and keep things as natural as possible. I try and use the patch tool as little as possible, and what I might just do is alter the colors. So get rid of any redness or things like that. Because there's enough pressures in the world without having me spit out loads of highly retouched images. So I try and keep it as natural as possible, and that way everyone is happy and we're living in a mentally healthier place. So as you can see by Hayley's skin, there's nothing really there to retouch out. Dark patch here, I think that's just from me pushing the limits of the camera. And then you can see Hayley's got her ears pierced but no earrings in, so sometimes I just get rid of that. I mean, is that too much? Is that too picky? I don't know. We do a before and after, so, you know, just getting rid of little blemishes and things that might be a little bit distracting there. So how to get rid of that redness. As you can see, the light on Hayley's face and arms and shoulders is really nice, but as her body gets further away from the light source, the light drops off, and then when I've boosted the shadows, we get a kind of uneven light, which isn't perhaps as nice as it is on her face. So how do you get rid of that? Here's how I get rid of that. I go to hue and saturation and I click on master and I go to reds. And then I bump up the saturation here. You can see once you bump up the saturation, anything that is red is really red because it's going orange here. So what I'll do is I'll bring the saturation back. I'll still keep it high actually. And I'll just change the hue there. Takes a little bit of the red out and I'll bump the saturation down and maybe the lightness. Now we can see that's totally desaturated it, but if I invert that layer and grab a rubber, and I'm just going to rub out some of that redness. So I've subtly adjusted the hue and saturation there on Hayley's skin, and I'm going to use some inverted high and low curve layers here, just to add a little bit of contrast. So I've been wrestling with something a little bit this week. Quite often as a freelancer, as a photographer, you get asked to do a little bit extra. So for example, you might be editing a video, filming and editing a video, and someone asks you to maybe, could you do a second edit? Could you do a short edit for Instagram? Or if you're taking photos, could you just retouch a couple more images? Or, you know, go beyond what we agreed to do. And if you're familiar with my Instagram, you'll know that I am really interested and I try and practice, you know, catching your emotions and sort of confronting them and questioning yourself about, well, why do I feel this way? Why am I reacting this way to, you know, these external forces or whatever? What's my instinctive reaction and what is the best reaction for all parties involved? So I got asked to do something a little bit beyond what was initially agreed on a certain project. So could I have done this extra thing? Yeah, no problem. Am I available? Was I available at that time? Did I have the extra time available to me to do this? Yeah, pretty much. But I had this internal conflict of, okay, do I do it? Am I letting someone take advantage of my good nature here? You know, I try and be the kindest possible person I can be, and I'm sure everyone, or the majority of people, do try and be the kindest person they can be. But when does your kindness start getting taken advantage of? Especially when you're talking about business. You've got to earn a living, you've got to, you know, pay your rent, pay your bills. Everyone's got goals they're aiming for financially. So when does mindfulness and when does having a good caring nature get in the way? Like, where do you draw the line? Where do I draw the line? And I had this real sort of internal conflict of, I don't feel like I should do this, but is this just my ego? Is this just my ego getting in the way of like doing a good thing for someone? And I'm just working away here with some highlights. I might have gone a bit overboard there. When you're working with highs and lows, be sure to always be zooming in and out just to double check your work. So you can see there with the highlight layer off, image looks perfectly fine. And then on, okay, no, that does add something extra. Should I agree to do the extra work just to be nice? Should I potentially let myself get taken advantage of? You know, personally, I try, like I say, to be as helpful as possible, always over-delivering, especially when asking you to do extra work. Yeah, sure, no problem. I always try and make other people's lives as easy as possible, or at least that's what I aim for. Whether I always do that or not, I'm not sure. And there was something in me that was just telling me that maybe you shouldn't agree to do this. So I had a chat to my sounding board, which is my other half, Helen, and I told her, you know, like, I got asked to do this and I want to be a nice person. I want to say, yes, I can do it, but it doesn't feel right. And she reminded me of something we watched the other day, which was, you've got to look after yourself first. You've got to look after your own priorities. You've got to have yourself covered. The best way to help others is to first of all help yourself. If you're spreading yourself too thin over multiple projects, or agreeing to shoot extra bits for projects or extra days or whatever, you're not going to be at your best. You're going to hate doing it. You're going to regret saying yes, and it's going to have just a bitter taste for yourself and for all those involved, because it's probably going to become pretty obvious that you feel like you're doing a favour by doing this extra time, and it's just going to not lead to a good environment. Fantastic! So basically with these inverted curves layers, I always see it as I'm just adjusting the light. I'm just shaping the light in Photoshop in a way that I didn't manage to do in camera. And I'm looking at this image and I'm wondering what else I can do here. If anything, maybe the background seems a bit dark where Hayley's shadow is. So what I might do here, let's try inverted curves layer and just boom, I'll just brighten up the whole background here, but especially this mirror. Oh, what a difference that has made. So my point is with the internal conflict there, is I guess you've probably heard people say it before, but you've got to look after yourself first before spreading yourself too thin. When you're freelance, it can be so easy to try and just please everyone. And obviously you want to please everyone as much as possible, but when it comes at the detriment of yourself and your own health, you've got to look after yourself and basically learn to say no. Because you don't want to be seen as a pushover, and there's a really fine line, I think, between always being on hand and always saying yes and always delivering and appeasing clients' needs as much as possible. There's a fine line between that and being a pushover. So I guess what I've learned this week is you've got to look after yourself first. You've got to put your own work, your own health at the forefront of everything to make sure you can look after and give your clients the best service that you can. Thanks for sticking with me through this. I am determined that this retouchy feely format has legs. It just still feels a little bit clunky. Maybe I haven't got my point across clearly enough. Maybe I haven't structured it right. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to stick with it for a while. Hopefully it works out. I've brought the raw image into Photoshop here so we can see the after and the before. So I really like how this has turned out. When you brighten that image up, the light is falling really nicely on Hayley, and I've brightened the backdrop there just to give the whole image a nice, bright, lively feeling, in tune with Hayley's movement and that natural smile that's on her face. I think that is just about it for today, guys. Thanks for watching episode 2 of Retouchy Feely. I hope I brought you some value, hope I raised some good points. Be sure to subscribe for future episodes. There's also plenty of vlogs and reviews and behind the scenes videos on my channel, so be sure to check those out. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next one.